So I play this very unique role of being trained in two ways. I spent 20 some years with my spiritual teacher who trained me to be a teacher, and then I also have a master's in psychology, and so was trained to be a counselor, a therapist. And what's really interesting, or it's kind of a bizarre experience for me, is I work with a lot of students from different traditions, different teachers, different lineages than just my own. The lineage I come from is actually quite small. And so just through the power of the internet, people reach out to me. And in one way or another, I've come to hear about, just way too many scandals with teachers, gurus, whether it's an incredible guru or, just like some small teacher like myself, And so I've worked a lot of just hearing and holding this space. And there was nothing in me that said, I want to do this type of work. I want to hear about the drama of the pain that, that's happening in the Zen Buddhist lineage or the Tibetan Buddhist lineage, or with some shaman from Peru or whatever it is. But people have just kind of seeked me out for that. And so I started to reflect, why is it that these great gurus, great masters can fall from grace? And for many years when I was young on the path, it was quite confusing. When you see an individual have such incredible light, such incredible brilliance, how could they fall? How could they make that kind of mistake with their students? And then when I was around 30 years old, I began teaching in one form or another. And I would sit, in a chair like this. And sometimes, I felt, I gave a good talk, and this transmission, this grace would flow through. And then, maybe after the talk, maybe a couple hours later, when I was putting my daughter to bed, or maybe my ex-wife would call me and give me a hard time, and maybe I would run my mouth in an inappropriate way, I realized, I'm human. I have this huge growing edge. I have a shadow. And I look at the great teachers and I say, look, they are human too. They have a growing edge. They have a shadow. And then it just became very clear to me, very clear, that one can sit in a chair like this. One can have great realizations on the path. But to have a great realization doesn't mean all of a sudden all of your inner psychological nature has been spontaneously healed. Everything has come fully and completely into alignment with the grace of the Most High. I mean, we are all children of the Most High. But our psychology, our bodies, our DNA, the epigenetics, the collective trauma, the wildness of this planet belong to this planet. And this is an evolutionary world. And so your guru may show up as a bright light, but they definitely have an evolutionary body, an evolutionary psychology. They may not have been properly trained, even in how to work with students or individuals. They may have no idea what projection is, or transference, or countertransference. This is why I found my psychological training so helpful. So helpful. So if someone projects on me, I say, okay, I don't need to get carried away with that. I don't need to take advantage of that. But if we have a great wound, a great shadow, where we weren't allowed to develop fully because, our parents didn't know how to be parents, or because, two lamas showed up at our house when we were 4 years old and said, you were going to be the next Dalai Lama or the next great guru. And so now you don't get to be raised by parents anymore. You're going to be raised by lamas. And so sometimes teachers skip developmental steps. Often they do. Often they do. And when we skip developmental steps, and we're a bright light, we still shine our bright light. But then when we walk forward into the world, in our interactions with our students, with our Sangha, because we've skipped the developmental step, sometimes we say the wrong thing. Sometimes we think everyone should be worshiping our feet. Sometimes we don't understand our own anger because we didn't have a father to pull us aside and say, hey, you've got to be a little violent with your little brother, or whatever it is. You need to apologize to him and learn humility. And so a great thing on this path, that my teacher taught me, was whoever comes, whether it's in your office, whether they show up on retreat, whether they show up in a room like this, to see them first and foremost as God, first and foremost as divine. And then you work with their humanity where they are at the level that they're at. The level. You meet them where they are. Now, the shadow side of spending too much time in therapy. Sometimes you'll go to a therapy office, and often a therapist is trained to see you as broken, or as confused, or as something that's diagnosable. But I like to hold this space of, you see everyone first and foremost as divine, as holy. As holy. And then from there, we look at, what's going on in the wound? What's going on in the shadow? A spiritual awakening, I don't mean to be rude, but it's a fairly easy thing. It's an easy thing. What's hard is to do the psychological work before, during, and after the fact. But when we do these two together, then we can be a bright light, which we all are, and be a clear conduit for the light to shine through. A clear conduit for the light to shine through. What a lot of folks do, because they've studied a mythological spirituality, is they think if I just wake up, then everything gets fixed. Everything gets fixed. It's a great myth, and that's one of the shadows of that's one of the great shadows of spirituality, especially modern day non-dual spirituality. We're coming a long way with that. We're coming a long way. And so one of the things I'd like to invite all of us to do here is just to feel into oneself, to feel into your beauty. Just right here, right now. Feel into your goodness, your strength, to feel into your divinity. To get in touch with this. And then from this space of love, can you look at your wound, your shadow, the places where you are contracted? If anyone's confused about this, it's good to look in the throat. It's good to look in the heart, the chest, the belly, the shoulders. And can you allow this love that you are to flow into the wound, to hold the wound, to meet it with love. This is how healing happens. This is how. And if any of you are confused about your shadow, I invite you to listen to the words of your wife, of your children, of your friends, of your colleagues. What kind of feedback has life been giving you? Some of my colleagues came to me and they said, "Craig, you talk too much. You talk too much when we're all together." I said, "Oh, let me look at that. Let me look at that." I said, "Oh, you're right. You're right. I have been talking too much. I have been dominating the time." If you hang out with a bunch of spiritual teachers, which is one of the fun things I do at a conference like this, we see we all talk too much and we talk on top of each other. So we all kind of think we're right and we have the solution. Sometimes if we're the spiritual person and our friends aren't so spiritual, we go to a conference like this, we want to go home and tell our wife, our husband, our partner, our friends, we want to be the guru to them. And we'll give them the great Dharma that's flowing from our heart. But some of us oftentimes, we simultaneously may not be empathetic enough to notice that they are losing interest in what we are saying. They're feeling like we're not seeing them fully and completely. That we are getting carried away in our own shadow of grandiosity. And so why do gurus fall from grace? It's the exact same reason we do. We're all human. All of us. All of us. Now, when anyone has trauma with a guru, it's important to deal with that. I've met a lot of individuals who they've had a traumatic experience with a guru and they may leave the path for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. And it's heartbreaking. A lot of people have trauma with the Christian tradition. Not because what Jesus did, but because what his followers have done. His followers have done. I think I've been judged 100 times by various Christians. But I have a great love for Christ. Great love. And so I'm not going to allow a human confusion to get in between me and the God of this universe. But it's a great mistake we make on the path. A great mistake. Because sometimes our guru lets us down and then we close our heart. But it's the human guru who let us down. God still is fully here, shining into your life, wanting to come into your heart, wanting to awaken you to the Most High. And so can you fall in love with this one truth and forgive humans for being human? But in order to forgive fully, you have to be willing to look inside first. When I look inside, I can find every great mistake that anyone has ever made. Within my own shadow, my own psychological nature, my own DNA, war, rape, violence, confusion, manipulation. If any of us have sat in meditation long enough, you'll find great shadows, great pain, great confusion. Hell, this morning when my wife was driving me to the conference, we drove past 3, 4 maybe even 5 homeless people. And these shopping carts just full of all their stuff. What did my heart say? My heart said, stop. Stop. Go lend a hand. But what did I do? I just sat there and let myself be chauffeured to this event like a king. It's heartbreaking, this world. It's heartbreaking. In order to do shadow work, in order to be an individual of great integrity, in order to be a clear conduit, in order to shine your absolute divinity into the world, you have to be willing to look at the places you shut down, the places you ignore, the places you deny, the places you guard or defend. Some of us get very, very comfortable in certain places within ourselves, and we just hang out there. That's a great shadow. Sometimes people get scared, or they think to speak about shadow it's like such a heavy thing. But the beautiful thing of the willingness to look at your shadow is there's tremendous gifts when you start to open. When I admit right now that I sat in a car like a king and drove past these homeless individuals in the streets, what I feel is I feel my heart breaking, and the sense of love flowing in their direction. I can see their faces. I feel a sense of inclusivity toward them, a sense of love for them, with them. I feel my heart opening more fully. More fully. This is a gift for them, but it's a gift for myself. For myself to open in this way. Not just to hide out in some transcendent space where everything is just blissful and spacious and free. I know that space. But Christ came to me when I was literally on my deathbed, because I called out to him. I said, oh, look, he came while I was in tremendous pain, tremendous suffering. What is that? That's the movement of love. Love goes in the direction of darkness, goes into the wound, it goes into pain, goes into confusion. It doesn't just hang out up here in transcendent realms. Love goes in the direction of pain, goes in the direction of anger. A lot of spiritual people are terrified of anger. When I found anger within my own self, it's one of the greatest gifts I gave myself. I'm really incredibly fucking angry and rageful. When I was able to see that, it's like, oh, I can step into this and liberate this anger. So I used to be this kid who didn't have a voice, who was terrified to speak, who felt so ridiculously unworthy and small. And when I met my anger, the first thing I saw was this false sense of humility, from like lifetimes of being a monk where I thought, oh, well, a good monk will just be quiet and pious and humble. But true humility is a willingness to sit with the anger, to open to the anger, to love the anger, to step into the rage. And then a funny thing happened. That little boy who was unworthy, when I gave him permission to feel his pain, his terror, his rage, that little boy began to grow up, become quite large. And that actually really frightened me. Can I take up this much space? Can I be this big? And then I heard the voice of God say, I didn't make you to be small. I made you to be big. Big. Not big, narcissistic, egotistical, running your mouth, kind of arrogant big. Not that kind of big. Christ was big. The Buddha was big. Kuan Yin was big. Mary was big. Amma is big. To be a goddess here on planet Earth. This is why God made you, to be a goddess. To be a bright light. But in order to be a bright light, in a clear bright light, it's important to have humility, radical humility, to do your shadow work, your trauma work. And not purely from a psychological place, because that can only take you so far. Can you do your trauma work, your shadow work, with Christ-like love for yourself? For yourself. So this is the invitation here. To step into your heart, your beauty, your divinity, your innocence. Your radical innocence. What most of us were taught on this path was that innocence is vulnerable like a little bunny rabbit. It can be squashed, it can be crushed. But innocence is one of the most powerful forces in the universe. It outlives every experience of trauma, pain, confusion, heartache, rage, abandonment, fear. Your innocence is just as beautiful as the day you were born. It's pouring out of your eyes, pouring out of your heart. To do this depth of work and not be overwhelmed by it, not be confused by it, not fall into what most psychologists fall into, of this state of just utter despair from working with pain and trauma all the time. You have to be in touch with your innocence. An innocence as big as the sky, as deep as the ocean, which is radically indestructible. The very innocence that lives from lifetime to lifetime. From lifetime to lifetime. What's that? Can you get to know this? And as we get to know this more and more, when you see your wound, your trauma, your confusion, when you see it in your brother, your sister, your guru, your teacher, your children, when you see their shadow, their pain, their wounds, you smile and you say, oh yeah, I see that in myself too. I can forgive them for being human. Doesn't mean you have to keep doing business with them, If they've harmed you greatly, please run and get some support. Get some support. Put up boundaries. Speak your truth. And get some support. And so, what time is it, Chad? And if anyone... Say it again? 5:21. So does anyone have a question or anything they want to share or ask? Or you're always welcome to correct me as well. I'm open to feedback as well. If I say something confusing, I'm dyslexic, so sometimes I get things mixed up or upside down or backwards. So, yeah, please. I think she right there, right next to you. Yeah.
Thank you, Craig.
Yeah. What's your name?
Shelley Pierce.
Shelley. Yeah.
So I was hoping to hear, and thank you for your talk, but what I was really hoping to hear was some recognition of the difference between regular people and gurus, which is power, and that's the main thing, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing is, as a psychotherapist who's been in many of these communities personally and also dealt with people who have suffered the traumas from gurus who, narcissistic gurus who fall from grace, as you say.
Yeah.
I think it's so incredibly important that gurus not just do their shadow work, but they do their shadow work and they talk about it.
Yeah.
They share their humanness.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard anyone do that here this weekend.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not one.
Yeah, so it's Shelley? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Shelley, that is a beautiful question. So at the beginning of this conference, me along with 4 friends, maybe 5 friends, we started this nonprofit called the Association for Spiritual Integrity, and we sent out this invitation to all the teachers in the conference to show up Thursday, and we met from I think it was noon to 5 p.m., or maybe it was 11 till 5 p.m. Basically, we met for 5 hours, all speaking about our wounds, our confusion, our struggles, our interactions with our students, where we trip, where we fall, where we get overwhelmed, where we need more support. And so I created a nonprofit. I'm one of the founding members to serve that very need. Because for years I've been hearing about this, and we said that something must be done. Something must be done. So the first thing we did was we created a code of ethics, which is similar to the code of ethics that a psychotherapist would have, that you commit to and study, while you're in graduate school before you begin working with people. And unfortunately, gurus don't always have that. They may have, like the precepts. They may have a commitment to right action or this or that. But it's one of the things that I do. I spend a tremendous amount of my free time volunteering, just building this group. And we do online trainings for teachers and spiritual leaders in the community to address this very need of teachers, gurus, whatever, anyone in these spiritual traditions. So one of the last trainings we did was with Dr. Cedar Barstow, who does power dynamics. So how to create healthy dynamics between teachers and students and really understanding. Like right now, I am in a power up position from you all. And so learning how that works, learning the dynamics of it, so that I, in the teacher role, do not abuse that. And so one of the things we're trying to do is to create a new culture within the spiritual world of integrity, of accountability, of transparency, and professionalism. And that absolutely includes wound work, shadow work. And so it's a big part of my life of leading the way in that.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. If I can just reiterate, what I'm saying is that spiritual teachers actually share their shadow work with students. So someone like Ram Dass, who for 40 years has been teaching Live Your Truth and has been in the closet. Or many teachers who are struggling financially and they depend on Donna and they're not talking about it. Right? These are the things that really
a lot of teachers hide behind, a wound, a shadow, a shame. They think that, they're supposed to have everything figured out. And these are all the very things we're speaking about in that 5-hour meeting. And I hope even today that I was able to share some of my shadow my wound, my confusion. You know, if we got my wife in the room, she'd give you a whole list of things. But you know, I have a 5-year-old girl and an 18-year-old girl, and all day long, you know, they're giving me feedback of where I drop the ball. And I assure you, I am no saint, no saint. Yes, the saint. I think you were the second person out, the man in the back there. Yes, so thank you.
Just one other thing.
Yeah.
Current shadow work too. That's the other thing. Current shadow work. Gurus will talk about, what happened 25 years ago.
Yeah.
But not what's happening this morning.
No, and it's so true, and that's absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and it's important that more and more students are being empowered. That's another thing that the Association of Spiritual Integrity aims to do, is to empower students to challenge their teachers. Hey, show up with a little bit more of your humanity. More of your humanity. Yeah, so it's beautiful. So thank you for having the courage for that. And so to model that too, because we don't want it just to be one-sided. We want all of us to be working together. And it's from voices like this coming forward. So yeah, truly, thank you. Yeah.
Hi. So one quick comment and then a question.
Yeah, please.
I think my comment is, it seems to me there are falls from grace, capital F, and then falls from grace, lowercase, less severe. And I worry to a certain extent that the culture has become non-resilient, at least in the face of what we might consider more minor transgressions, which I think now get lumped in. So I'll just leave that as a comment. I think my question is, if you're spending time with spiritual teachers, what do you think is the block that keeps them from doing psychological work? Because it would seem, if you've grown up anytime since the 70s, I mean, it's almost like a joke. It's like you're a spiritual teacher, you are going to walk into something, because just about everybody who we all admire in here has had something. Very few seem to have escaped. So I wonder what isn't clicking, do you think, for the spiritual teacher of more today's generation that keeps them from that psychological shadow work?
Well, I think the problem with modern day spirituality, it's still stuck in the past. It's just really stuck in the past. So the model is, if I have had a spiritual awakening, I am therefore now perfect in my humanity. And, and then if you have students who are projecting perfection on you, oftentimes in the teacher role, a lot of teachers have reported to me, they are afraid to share any of their wound, their shadow, because they're afraid to let their students down. And I can assure you, I let my students down on a daily basis. I let my kids down on a daily basis. And so that's one of the things that we're trying to change in the community. So there's that, and then also there's just lack of training. People have equated, say, non-dual awakening with, I therefore now know how to teach. I now know how to work with individuals. And that is very arrogant, and it's also just foolish. It's foolish. Because it takes great skill in understanding how to work with an individual. It takes great skill just learning how to listen to one another with an open heart. With an open heart. And a lot of teachers just aren't trained. And it's greatly unfortunate. Greatly unfortunate. And again, so this is one of my passions, is helping teachers say, training is good. Just like in the world of psychology, if you're a doctor, if you're a lawyer, you get ongoing education. Even soldiers who go into combat get ongoing education about the rules of engagement. So spiritual teachers, oftentimes, there's a supreme arrogance in this community, if you haven't noticed. They think they are above feedback, above continuing education. And so that's one of the things we're trying to promote is just like a basic humility and wisdom. It's like, hey, we're humans. We're growing. We're growing. And we live in an evolutionary world. And so this can always be refined. And so anyone who steps into a role of leadership, if they do not have that just as a basic principle, they become a dangerous person very quickly. Dangerous. And like you said, sometimes just a little dangerous, sometimes really dangerous. I was fortunate. I had great teachers who were individuals of great integrity. And then I kind of traveled around and met some who were also great teachers, but who had no integrity. And that was very confusing for me, to sit there and to see a teacher publicly humiliate a student, to tear them to shreds, to speak about ego death, just tear them to pieces when they had intense trauma within their body and their nervous system. And so I saw when I was quite young, oh, there's something off in that teacher. I'm going to go back to my root teacher where I know there's something good and I can trust. And so one of the great things, that I encourage all students is to listen to your heart, listen to your gut, listen to your own discernment. Stand on your own 2 feet, have your own power. Oftentimes as a student, and I even consider myself as a student, even though I'm sitting in a seat, it's like we want to always hold that discernment within our belly. Listen to that voice. If something stinks, it's like leave the room. Leave the room. Doesn't mean all their teachings are bad, but it's good to leave the room, set boundaries. So I saw a hand in the back, right?
Yeah, thank you, Craig. We are at time, so for those of you that need to leave, you can leave. We don't have anybody after this room, so you can stay and answer questions for maybe another 10 or so.
I think the closing ceremony starts in 10 or 15 minutes, so there's a couple more minutes if anyone wants.
But if you want to field another question or two, then you're welcome to. There's a hot hand right here.
Thank you very much. I appreciate this ethical community you have created. I've been with quite a few spirited teachers, and I agree that this happens very frequently.
Yes.
And I had a lot of pain from that a few occasions, because I mentioned earlier that I've been kind of addicted to gurus as well as other things. But one thing I noticed, could it be this simple? I mean, I read this book, After the Ecstasy, The Laundry by Jack Kornfield.
Oh, it's a beautiful work.
Yeah, and I don't know if this fits with you, but I could see that a lot of teachers are afraid to be more honest, because they have these projections from the disciples that they should be this way. And if they are honest, they will lose money. They will just lose disciples. Couldn't that be a reason for this? Just a financial reason?
It's absolutely a reason. And let me tell you how I feel about projection. When individuals project on me, and if I project on you, if I project that I'm the teacher and you're the student, what it feels like energetically is a wall of division. And so if I truly want to live in oneness, I don't want any walls. I don't want any projections. I don't want to hide behind anything. And so I'm a big fan of letting those walls drop. And so if people, project onto me, I like to tell them real quickly, hey, I'm just a guy. I'm just some dude. How about I'm going to open my heart and I'm going to see the divinity in you. And you keep your heart open and see the divinity in me. And see the divinity in me. Then we can really relate, without the projection. And to be honest, I often too, when I sit with teachers, I see them hiding behind those walls. My heart breaks because I can feel their pain. I can feel their isolation. I can feel their nervousness. And it's heartbreaking to see my colleagues, some of them. It's heartbreaking when I've done it, to see myself hiding behind something. It's heartbreaking. And so it all comes back to this willingness to be humble, to be innocent, to be open, and let those walls fall away. Let them fall away.
Bella.
Hi. I wanted to speak more about how you were talking about how the poor, like how the homeless people you saw when you're driving here. I have a uncle who he is homeless, and the way that they treat homeless people are not anything equal to how they treat like non-homeless people.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's why we have homeless, because, you know, oftentimes culturally we systematically ignore them, deny them, you know, diagnose them, just, you know, forget about them, push them to the side. And it's heart-wrenching. It's heart-wrenching when we do that. Because you love your uncle, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's a man. And not only is he a man, he's a child of the Most High, just like you. And he's worthy of our love, our respect. He's worthy of our hearts. Of our hearts. So thank you, Bella, for sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so beautiful. So beautiful.